urgent pressing needs that people in every one of our communities have every day.
First question's about, obviously, the big political story the last week, the idea of impeaching President Trump. You initially came out against it. You've switched on that. Now you're saying you're for impeachment. What was the catalyst for that change?
Sure, I'll just clarify it a little bit. I've spoken out against pursuing impeachment for a long time, simply because many of those who've been advocating for it have been doing so with a partisan motive. People who are really unhappy with the outcome of the election in 2016 and want to be able to see, hey, we got to get Donald Trump out of office. In my view, pursuing this out of a partisan motive would further tear apart an already divided country. And those motives would be very clear to people. And this is actually dangerous for our democracy, because if we get to a point where one party is unhappy with the outcome of the election and then they'll just pursue impeachment to try to undo the outcome that the voters had, well then when the other party gets elected, then the other party goes, and it just starts this endless cycle that ultimately undermines our democracy, and votes have consequences, elections have consequences. What's changed over the last week or almost 2 weeks now has been the information that's been revealed through this whistleblower's complaint, the Inspector General's memo. There's been a number of pieces of information that have been released that are greatly concerning about potential abuse of power. And so I'm supporting the inquiry that is happening right now in Congress, because I think that the American people need the truth, and they need all the facts and the evidence. And then we as a country can then make the best determination in a nonpartisan way possible about what actions or recourse there needs to be at that point.
So, Representative Gabbard, your platform includes resolving student debt and guaranteeing college for all.
Yeah.
Could you expand upon your approach to achieving that affordable college education compared to some of the other candidates?
Sure. Look, this is a challenge that's facing not only my generation, but the generation that's followed us now. I think that the approach that we've seen in the College for All bill that I've co-sponsored is an important one. We have to look at debt forgiveness, especially for different sectors and different areas in public service, jobs. But I think we also have to get to the heart of the rising cost of higher education and how we are failing to maximize the opportunities that technology has to offer us in both how we can bring down that cost of higher education, increase access to many more people than who may feel they have access now, while also opening up more doors and opportunities for those who feel like pursuing a 4-year bachelor's degree is not the right option for them. You know, there's unfortunately a lot of stigma still around those who either would like to go straight into some kind of vocational training, learn a trade, go into an apprenticeship, or even start a small business directly out of high school. I think there's a lot of different skills and opportunities that make every person unique, and the more we can open up those doors for our young people to be able to explore how best to maximize their own skills, the better off we are as a society. When we look at technology, I did most of my bachelor's degree actually through online distance learning. And this was more as a matter of a practical necessity, where I was both working full-time while here at home, and then continued to pursue my degree while I was deployed to both Iraq and Kuwait. So in Iraq, we had an education tent, Chris, I don't know if you remember, and I would go in and take tests and take classes online while we were there in Iraq. And so that was something that way back then was not very common, but more and more these opportunities are being opened up for folks to be able to ultimately get the kind of either degree or training that they need.
Okay, thank you. So Representative Gabbard, the issue of social media companies and censoring speech has been very important during your campaign.
Yeah.
So I want to, what are your thoughts on social media platforms influencing our political discourse? And then in addition to this, how do you think that lawmakers should address these concerns? For example, the concern associated with big tech companies and how they handle consumer data is one example.
I think there's a couple of issues there with big tech companies. Specifically, it's Google and Facebook are the two big monopolies that we have within the digital world. And I think you raised two important issues. One is how they're handling our personal and private information. And number two is about freedom of speech and how these big tech monopolies are able to influence what kind of information we are seeing, and either pushing forward one voice or a certain narrative while holding others back, unbeknownst to us. As we're typing in a search on Google, it is their algorithms that control what pops up on that first page or that second page versus what gets buried in maybe page 10 or 20 or 30. Same thing on Facebook with our Facebook pages. Whether you're talking about Facebook or Instagram, there's been a lot of changes recently now with Instagram. I don't know if you guys noticed, now you'll see things popping up that are like 3 days old, so it's not just giving you what's most current and recent. They're controlling what is actually popping up in your feed and when. That's concerning to me because it leaves open a lot of room for abuse. This is something that my campaign has experienced. Is it this one? This is something that my campaign's had direct experience with, and where I had already had concerns about making sure that we break up the big tech monopolies using the antitrust laws that we have in place, and also exercise some congressional oversight, legislative oversight, to protect both our civil liberties and privacy as well as freedom of speech. But back during the first Democratic presidential debate that we had, I think it was in June, we were hoping that I would be Googled a lot as a result of that debate. And so in advance, we had set up our Google Ads account. We had ads that we were running, hoping and preparing that if any of you were watching and you said, okay, who's Tulsi Gabbard? Never heard of her before, that you would be sent to my website. When I did turn out to be the most Googled candidate of that debate night, the problem was that during that peak search period, when I was most searched online, our Google Ads account was shut down. And it was shut down without any kind of notice from Google saying, this is what's wrong with your account, fix this, and we will reinstate it. Our tech guys were calling, emailing, trying to figure out, hey, what's going on here? What do we have to do to get our ads back up? And didn't get a response for hours. Once we started getting responses, they came from different people at different times, and none of them really fit together, none of them made sense, and none of them provided the clear direction of what we needed to do to fix the problem. Magically, after that peak search period had passed, our Google Ads account was reinstated and our ads started popping up again. And to this day, we have yet to receive any kind of explanation from Google about why that happened. So when you think about how this could happen to a member of Congress running for the highest office of the land, you see how Google has the power to be able to do this to anyone, whether you're a candidate running for, local school board or who knows, or if you're just someone who's trying to get your information out into the internet. It's this kind of power to be able to influence our public discourse and actually our elections that I think is very dangerous.
And with that, I think we'll send it out to the audience for questions. We have one over there.
Yeah. Hi, Andrea Schreiber. I actually came to see you in Londonderry a couple nights ago,
yeah.
And was so intrigued that I wanted to come back and see you sitting in a group of young people, because that was a much older demographic up there. And the question, there's so many questions I could have for you. I'm very intrigued by you. But what I would like you to talk about is big oil, the plastic pandemic, and the environment. I love it that you went and visited South Dakota and spoke with American Indian people who held this land for so many generations, thousands of years, and are probably the most invisible people. But the plastic pandemic, the environment, and the difficulties facing our children, for someone that lived all my life here, I would really like to hear you talk about that.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming back for more information. Similar to, I was really grateful to be able to go to Standing Rock and to just experience their water protectors who came from all over the country, all different ages, different backgrounds, different politics, different ideologies coming together there really to stand in protection of water. And I'd never experienced anything like that before. It was tens of thousands of people who were literally camped out together, people volunteering, cooking, feeding each other. They had medics on standby, and they were just taking care of each other. And it's rare that you see that so many people are coming together out of the goodness of their heart to stand up for someone else's right to clean water, the thing that's essential to all of us for our existence. So as you know, the motto or the mantra that was repeated there was Miniwichoni, which means water is life, which is such an important thing for all of us to remember as we look at the environmental threats that we face. Growing up in Hawaii, I'm grateful to have been brought up around Native Hawaiian culture, which, like other indigenous cultures, places a huge amount of importance and respect on our planet, recognizing that we are caretakers and custodians of this planet and the resources that it provides to us to be able to live, clean water to drink, food to eat, air to breathe, and so on. And that's, for me, since I was a teenager, what has fueled my own passion for protecting our environment. As a member of Congress, we've been working in different ways. Actually, in each of the offices that I've held, we've worked in different ways to try to address some of the very specific problems that you've brought up that have to do with this plastic pollution that we're seeing. I just read an article the other day about some diver who dove to the deepest depths of the ocean. Did you see this? The deepest depths of the ocean, farther down than anyone has ever gone before. And what did he find? Plastic. Plastic. I think it was a plastic bag or a plastic wrapper. And it was really heartbreaking to read that, but unfortunately not surprising. And so one thing that we did in Hawaii in the Honolulu City Council while I was there, and that many communities have started to do, is to begin with a plastic bag ban, the plastic shopping bags. Others are moving forward, I think, in the right direction to move away from single-use plastics. I think that as we look at making these kinds of policy changes, other countries have done national bans saying that in the next 4 years, the next 6 years, they're going to get rid of single-use plastics altogether. As we do that, we can look to technology and innovation for the many biodegradable alternatives that are being created, whether you're talking about a plastic shopping bag or many of the other single-use plastics that we use in our everyday lives, chip bags and so on. I think that the more we can incentivize these industries in growing, then we can begin to address this single-use plastic pollution that we're seeing. This is similar to what I believe needs to happen with our dependence on fossil fuels, that we know that we need to make this transition off of fossil fuels towards clean, renewable energy. Some of the big fossil fuel corporations are starting to recognize that that's where the money's at, because renewable energy is getting cheaper and cheaper, and even they are starting to move some of their investments in that direction. But we as taxpayers are still subsidizing these big fossil fuel corporations almost $30 billion every year, perpetuating this old, outdated, literally fossilized, polluting form of energy, rather than looking at how we can use our taxpayer dollars to better incentivize all of the new technology and innovation that's going into many different sources of clean, renewable energy. So we have a lot of power as people to be able to dictate what direction, what policies we want to take at every level of government. And this is where all of the activism that we're seeing growing here in the United States and around the world is so important, to make sure that leaders in our country know that we are looking forward to our future and we are ready to fight to protect it.
Assuming you're elected president, and assuming also that Congress is still basically the same way it is now, what would you do to improve Congress working better together with the administrative side?
Start by just talking with one another. You'd be surprised how little that actually happens in Washington. And it's not just screaming at each other through Fox News or MSNBC and calling names to each other, but actually sitting down as we are and having real conversations, real dialogue and discourse. So much of the hyper-partisanship in Washington is fueled by the two political parties whose interest is in either maintaining power or getting power back, depending on which way the pendulum is swinging, rather than actually about how we as elected leaders and representatives in this country should be working together to best serve the people. I mean, this is the mission that we have been given, every one of us. It speaks to the oath that we take when we're sworn into office. And yet, for so long now, we, the people, do not have a government that is of, by, and for the people. Instead, it's of, by, and for the few and the rich and the powerful, and we, the people, get left behind as a result. I'll tell you one thing I did coming in as a new member of Congress, understanding that this is 2012 when I was elected, I'd be coming in as a freshman in Congress, a Democrat in the minority from a very small state in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And so not naive to, the kind of clout I would have coming in, but also knew that I was coming in wanting to work for my constituents, and that requires building relationships. I was told by some political experts in Washington when I first went there that don't even try to introduce a bill, because with Republicans in charge, you won't get it passed. So don't even try. Just sit back and try to win back the House, get Democrats in power, and then you'll be in a great place. You'll be able to do so much good. But until then, just hang back. That was I said thanks for the advice, but no thanks. That's not what I'm interested in doing. And so I had an idea. What's the universal language that brings us all here today, as a matter of fact? Food, right? Food. Really, y'all are here for the pizza. And so I called my mother in Hawaii, and I asked her if she would make 434 boxes of this incredible macadamia nut toffee that she makes at home. And she thought it was a great idea. Make all of this toffee that I could give to my soon-to-be new friends and colleagues. And so she said, yep, I'm in, I'll do it. And then I said, I have one more request. I asked, would you make another 435 bigger boxes of toffee for the staff of every member of Congress, Democrats and Republicans? And she paused just for a moment just to say, okay, I think that might take a little bit longer. But she and my dad raised 5 kids. She's a warrior, and she got to work. She's stirring 2 pots of toffee at once at home, pouring the toffee. My dad's the quality control guy. He took one little piece from every single pan, made sure it was, up to snuff. And while they were doing that, I was in Washington just writing handwritten notes to every one of my new colleagues, learning about them. Where are they from? What's their background? What are their interests? And it was incredible to see how quickly this small gesture of reaching out had an impact. Where, within the first few days of us delivering these little gifts of aloha, I had Republicans who, in charge of big committees or chair of this committee or that subcommittee, making that long walk across the floor from the Republican side to the Democratic side, finding me and just saying thank you so much. I ate all the toffee, so I need to figure out how to get more to take home with me. But then most importantly saying, look, I'm the chair of this committee, or I'm working on this issue. Tell me what's important to your constituents in Hawaii. Tell me some of the things that you're interested in working on, and let me know how we can work together. And it's that small gesture at the outset of reaching out with respect, what we in Hawaii call aloha, that had a great impact and enabled me to be able to build off those relationships, to be able to get legislation passed, ultimately get things done. Working with people, hey, we might disagree on 9 out of 10 things, but if there's that one thing, let's pursue that and have that be the starting point for the relationship that we need to put service above self, to put the well-being of our people ahead of politics. And it's that kind of leadership that I would bring to the White House, to be able to begin to heal these divisive wounds and build these bridges that are necessary if we're serious about getting things done as it relates to climate change, as it relates to immigration reform, as it relates to healthcare reform. Every single issue that we need to tackle must be done by working with those with whom we may disagree with on other issues. We've got to find that way forward together.
We have one more, and I think right over here. One more.
Hi, Tulsi.
Nice to see you.
My name's Jeremy. I'm with New Hampshire Peace Action. I want to thank you for your leadership on the No First Use bill in the House.
Thank
and
you.
I also want to thank you for being sort of the most vocal person on the campaign trail about peace.
Yeah.
In the past, cloud formations, geese, and weather balloons have been mistaken by both the United States and Russia as an incoming nuclear strike. And we still maintain our entire nuclear arsenal on hair trigger alert, which essentially means that we can launch them in less than 10 minutes. Now, the arms control community suggests that we should remove that hair trigger alert status of our nukes. I'm wondering what your position is on hair trigger alert.
I support removing that hair trigger alert for all the reasons that you've just suggested, that we've seen throughout decades now, so many hundreds, if not thousands, of near misses, of these accidental perceptions or assumptions that something is an incoming attack, and then thankfully in the nick of time they realize, oh no, it's actually a flock of geese, or it's actually a reflection of a new satellite that's just been launched. So many of these different examples are cause for grave concern, given this hair trigger alert and given the fact that there is not a no first use policy in place. So all it would require is our country or theirs or Russia's looking and seeing, oh gosh, you've got somebody who's monitoring around the clock, right? Is there an incoming attack or not? And seeing something and making that mistake of thinking it actually is attack, and then trying to preempt it by launching an attack of their own. And once that happens, it's game over. It's not just saying, well, a nuclear weapon. If we look at the power and the magnitude of these nuclear weapons that exist today, they are far greater than what was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And these are not weapons that are built to just take out a very targeted military target. That these are things that will take out, entire cities, if not more. What to speak of the nuclear fallout and the nuclear winter that comes after that. So really what we're talking about when we say that there's a nuclear threat, what we're talking about is nuclear annihilation for our planet. And we got to be real and clear-eyed about what this means, and how not only do we still have all these missiles on hair trigger alert, but we have increasing tensions between our country and Russia and China, both nuclear armed countries, that are only pushing us closer and closer to the possibility, to that brink of nuclear catastrophe. This is something that we in Hawaii got a huge wake-up call to last year in January. I don't know how many of you heard or saw it on the news when we got a very terrifying message on over 1 million cell phones all across the state saying, missile incoming, seek immediate shelter, this is not a drill. And this is why you've heard me talk about this before. This was a huge wake-up call for us about how real this threat is, where if you can just imagine if we got that message right here as we're sitting here, that there's a missile incoming, seek immediate shelter, this is not a drill, you got 15 minutes, roughly, to find shelter. Where would you go? Where would you go? We would stay here. We would not be protected here. Downstairs, that would be a good effort, but we would not be protected there. And that is the serious hoax that really this is that our leaders have failed us, pushed us to this point where this threat is real for any one of us in this country. They've got an elaborate warning system that says seek shelter immediately if such an attack comes through, but there is no shelter. There is nowhere to go. And this wake-up call that we had in Hawaii was a huge kind of turning point, instigator for me ultimately to make a decision to run for president, because our very future is at stake. Our existence is at stake. This is the greatest existential threat that we face. It does not have to be this way. We can make these changes, some of which you're talking about. We are already working in Congress to move in this direction, but we can change this by de-escalating these tensions, which is why the very first thing that I'll do if I'm elected president in the Oval Office is to call for a summit with the United States, China, and Russia to begin this dialogue necessary to walk us back from this brink that we are standing upon, and begin those tough negotiations necessary to move us forward towards a future where no family here, or anywhere for that matter, has to live in fear that at any moment that alert could come across your phone or across your TV screen and leaving you wondering, what will I do with the last 15 minutes of my life?
Turn it over here.
Thank you all so much. I think we're all done. So we're going to do a photo line for anyone who's interested. As I mentioned before, you can line up by the pizza, so there's more pizza as you come through.
How many of these have you done before?
Thank you guys all so much for coming. We do have our volunteers in the back, and if you're interested in helping more, please.
Yeah.
I've never done it before, but I participated
We'll
in
come up right here.
Okay.
We had
Bill Wells, and James Pepe.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
I've never done it up here before either, but
Really?
it was an awesome experience.
Good. I'm glad. Yeah, of course.
You guys cut the line.
My mom would love that.
He gets to cut the line.
Want to get a picture? Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, of course. No problem.
That's true. Yes. I wish you were gonna have more time to
Let's
ask
show
more
you.
questions.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, can I grab this shot of the four?
Yeah, let's get a. Let me jump in here in the middle if you don't mind. Here we go.
Right here for me. Awesome. Couple more. Somebody always blinks. Stunning.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take this on the road.
Oh yeah, you're. Oh, thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much. Looking forward to this. I heard it was good pizza. Yeah. Thank you.
You'll be coming to the no labels convention?
I will be there. Yes, I'm confirmed. Thank you for doing the work you guys are doing. I've worked with No Labels for a long time in DC. Yeah. Thank you. So nice to meet you. Appreciate you coming today. Thanks for being here. We'll see you at the convention. All right. Maybe.